Hello everyone, NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this finds you healthy these days and safe. If not, then I hope you use the opportunity to do some serious daimoku. And let me know so that I can chant along with you. And together we'll combine our energies toward good health and better circumstances for everyone in our circles, in our influence, right? Okay, so what are we doing today? Today, we are starting one of the absolute favorite go-shos in Buddhist study. This one's been talked about. Nichiren talks about it, references it all the time. Anyone who's a Nichiren Buddhist, through whatever means you've discovered Nichiren's doctrines, has heard of this. And if you haven't, well, you're about to. It is called The One-Eyed Turtle and the Floating Log. And it's one of those stories like, when whether it's a frog or a turtle, the protagonists are different depending on where you've heard the story, with the scorpion looking to get across a river, and he solicits the aid of a frog or a turtle or whatever sea creature, and you know the rest. It's one of those kind of, you put it in your pocket and you pull it out whenever it's relevant, either for yourself or to share with others. This is one of those. So, here we go. The Peaceful Practices chapter in the 5th volume of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, Manjushri, as for this Lotus Sutra, throughout immeasurable numbers of lands, one cannot even hear its name. How lamentable is that, huh? This passage means that we living beings, transmigrating through the 6 paths of the threefold world, have been born sometime in the world of heavenly beings, other times in the world of human beings, and still other times in the worlds of hell, hungry spirits, and animals. Thus we have been born in immeasurable numbers of lands, where we have undergone innumerable sufferings and occasionally enjoyed pleasures, but having never once been born in a land where the Lotus Sutra has spread. Or even if we happen to have been born in such a land, we did not chant NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. We never dreamed of chanting it, nor did we ever hear others chant it. Now that's a really important paragraph for your Buddhist study, because one of the important concepts of Buddhism in the dissection of mental cognition is the concept of the 10 worlds, right? Hell, hunger, animality, excuse me, from the top down, Buddha, Bodhisattva, realization, learning, nin, which is a state of stasis, sometimes called humanity, and anger, which is a state of manipulation and backstabbing and contriving, right? It's usually a big part of greed, trying to just avarice, just trying to get more and more, not just by one's own devices, but by their devices of manipulating others to get them what they want. That's anger in Buddhism. Hell with its component of rage and suffering, and hunger with its component of unsatiable desire. In other words, you're human, you have desires, but no matter how much you get, you always want more. You're never satiated. What a horrible life state that is, right? And so on and so forth. And then 10 worlds would not be complete as a teaching if we didn't understand that each of those worlds contain the other 9, or the other 10 fully. So you can be in the Buddha of Buddha, you can be in the Bodhisattva of hell, you can be in the anger of Nin, because each of these worlds are not resting places. They're states of mind that are constantly, moment to moment, remember, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, moment to moment, in flux. And we shift wildly through them all, constantly. We tend to gravitate to a home base sort of thing. So we tend to live our lives around a certain group of these worlds. The only thing that penetrates this constant movement is NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo, NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. We penetrate through all of those, and that would be more obvious in the teaching of the 9 consciousnesses. So you can do a search on this channel, and you'll find videos where I've talked about the 9 consciousnesses and the way that chanting Daimoku penetrates through all those consciousnesses to the core Buddha consciousness, which is how we experience our Buddha consciousness. By breaking through all of those other consciousnesses, it's a very unique place. And as it pierces through those other consciousnesses, it doesn't destroy them. It simply clears them. So the components of those other consciousnesses, eye, ear, taste, feel, so on and so forth, they're cleansed. By cleansed, I mean their attachments, which is specific to each one of us, are cleared away so that they're experienced fully in the moment without the attachment of these other influences, right? So this is what he's talking about when he says we're transmigrating through the 6 paths of the threefold world. The 6 paths are the 6 lower worlds, right? The higher worlds being learning, realization, bodhisattva, and Buddha. All the lower worlds are our human home base, as it were, the samsaric home base, when we transmigrate through those. But when we learn, we kind of leave some of that behind. And as we learn, as we collect knowledge, we then have epiphanies, realizations, right? That's another world yet. Think of anything that you've tried to excel at, whether it's track and field and swimming, or it's baseball or football, or it's science and math, or it's whatever, Buddhism, right? There are moments when you're just slogging through learning, which is more of a nin, or you're searching for information, and everything you read doesn't quite measure up to what you think you want to know. That's more the world of hunger, right? Or not hunger. Hunger, insatiable. And when you make those epiphanies as you're learning, you're teaching yourself, suddenly, oh, I get this. Well, that's realization, right? And that's very intoxicating. That's why in Buddhism we talk about ichantikas, or the incorrigible disbelief. Because if you're really a committed student, you'll learn and you'll have realizations, and you'll learn some more and have more realizations. And that's so exciting. It's very intoxicating. And so if somebody comes along and says there's a higher state that you're not looking at, you tend to rear back on your heels and go, wait a minute, sir. You know, I really know this stuff. Bodhisattva is a way of letting go of the certainty that you've experienced, and that opens yourself up to a much larger realization, right? But it's hard to take that step to bodhisattva. This is why we chant, because by going through to our Buddha nature, our samsaric experience can move more and more toward a bodhisattva life, right? I recently had one of you ask a question about when I chant, do I change other people's karma? If I chant about that, will I change their karma? And the hard answer as a bodhisattva is no. But yes, you will affect them. You will influence their life. Like when somebody inspires you, you watch the Olympics and, maybe you're young and you're into cycling, say, and you watch the Tour de France. And man, that inspires you to go out there and train and do well on your bicycle. I was one of those people. I loved cycling when I was young. So you go out there and do that. But I was influenced, or you might be influenced by a swimmer or a runner or whatever it be. And that lifts your life because now you're setting goals, you're setting expectations of yourselves. So yeah, that's affecting you. But does it change your karma? No, because until you get on the bicycle or you start running the track and you start challenging yourself to get to those times or those abilities that will bring you to the Tour de France, that will put you into national competition, that's a whole nother level of dedication, right? And that level of dedication is what constructs in you a change in your karma. Same is true with Buddhism. With our chanting and our daimoku and our practice and our study, we build in our lives a radiating force that influences others. And some may become very curious and want to know more, and they will be affected, even if they don't practice Buddhism, to do better, to emulate you. But until they take it upon themselves to attain what you've attained, their karma isn't changed. It's influenced, but it's on them to do something with that influence. Do you see? So I can plant the seed in my mother, who's a staunch Catholic, and tell her about NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. I can have her say it with me, NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. And because I'm her son, which is actually what's in the way, is she will endeavor to say it, just to please her son. But you see, that doesn't change her karma. That gives her the tool to change her karma. I've planted the seed that hopefully will gain traction and build in her a curiosity for herself. And then, and only then, will she start to hear NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo or say NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo for herself to change her life. Even if it's initially because she's desperate to somehow reach me or my life or love or whatever it is that motivates her, it doesn't matter. Earthly desires are enlightenment, remember? The point is to get her to chant the daimoku for herself. Then she's on the path. Follow? So, that's a lot of blah, blah, blah around this. But I just want you to realize how important this paragraph is in describing this transmigration. It's a tasty word, but it's important to understand what is meant by this use of this word in this translation. Is that what Nichiren is discussing here is our samsaric experience. And in that samsaric experience, it's very rare that we run into someone who practices this daimoku, right? The Lotus Sutra. And when we do, it's rarer still that it piques our curiosity and that we want to know more. But largely speaking, in the world population, there's entire thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who've never heard of NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo or know anyone who practices Buddhism. Or if they do, they see them from afar and they go, oh, Buddhist, with whatever all that means to them, right? And even if you know a ton of Buddhists, you may not hear the Lotus Sutra. So it's a tremendous opportunity to meet this sutra. And this story, and the reason I'm going through all of this explanation, is about exactly that opportunity and how precious it is. To illustrate the extreme rarity of encountering this sutra, the Buddha likened it to the difficulty of a one-eyed turtle encountering a floating sandalwood log with a hollow in it. Now, this is Shakyamuni's teaching. Nichiren is simply demonstrating it and talking about it. But this is how important this analogy, this story, this fable, whatever you want to call it, this example of the one-eyed turtle finding a hollow in a log that just fits him perfectly. All right, that sounds like a fun... What do we mean by that? How important or how deep can that story be, right? Well, here we go. The essence of this analogy is as follows. 80,000 yohanas down, on the bottom of the ocean, lives a large sea creature called a turtle. So he's talking about these huge sea turtles that you may have seen on television or that you may not know about, but they are immense. You can sit on one and it'll drive you around, right? They're big. And they live for something like 300 years or something. It's crazy. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I seem to remember from those wonderful nature shows on television. Anyway, this turtle, this sea turtle, he has neither limbs nor flippers. His belly is as hot as heated iron, but the shell on his back is as cold as the snow mountains. What this turtle yearns for, day and night, morning and evening, the desire he utters at each moment of his life, is to cool his belly and warm the shell on his back. So this turtle is handicapped. He can't run around like the other sea turtles can, and so he suffers. He suffers because his life condition is one of constant imbalance. He's suffering through painful heat on the one side, while the other side is chilled, and you could imagine how uncomfortable this sea creature is. The red sandalwood tree is regarded as sacred and is like a sage among people. So this is a comparison of how valuable this sandalwood tree is, and it's a symbol in this analogy. All other trees are regarded as ordinary trees and are like foolish people, like people who don't know better, ignorant, right? The wood of this sandalwood tree has the power to cool the turtle's belly. So if he could get on a sandalwood log, he could cool his belly. It would absorb the heat in his belly. The turtle longs with all his might to climb onto a sandalwood log and place his belly in a hollow there in order to cool it, while exposing the shell on his back to the sun in order to warm it. Makes sense, right? But now this, as I said, it's a big turtle. So it can't just climb on a log. The log will flip him over. He'll fall off of it. He needs a log that has a certain hollow in the side of it that will fit his enormous belly and hold him steady without tipping the log or any of those problems. So this is the function of the hollow. According to the laws of nature, however, he can rise to the ocean's surface once every 1,000 years. But even then, it is difficult for him to find a sandalwood log. Could you imagine? He's at the bottom of the sea. Only once every 1,000 years can he poke his head up out of the water and look for this sandalwood log. How likely is it that he's going to find any log in a 1,000-year peak, let alone a sandalwood log, let alone a sandalwood log with a perfect hollow in it, let alone a sandalwood log with a perfect hollow in it that he can climb onto? Right? You see how the exponential likelihood or non-likelihood is in this analogy. The ocean is vast, while the turtle is small, relatively. and floating logs are few. Even if he finds some floating logs, he seldom encounters one of sandalwood. There you have it. And even when he is fortunate enough to find a sandalwood log, it rarely has a hollow the size of his belly. Even if it has a hollow, it may not be the right size. If the hollow is too large, he falls into it. He cannot warm his shell on his back, and no one will be there to pull him out. If the hollow is too small and he cannot place his belly in it, the waves will wash him away and he will sink back to the ocean's floor. So much for that. Even when, against all odds, the turtle comes across a floating sandalwood log with a hollow of the right size, having only one eye, another handicap, having only one eye, his vision is distorted, right? His depth of field is messed up. And he sees the log as drifting eastward when it actually is drifting westward. Thus, the harder he swims in his hurry to climb onto the log, the farther away he goes. When it drifts eastward, he sees it as drifting westward, and in the same way, he mistakes south for north. Thus, he's always moving away from the log, never approaching it. And this analogy is our samsaric experience of life, right? Our illusions and opinions, our ignorance about Buddhism, our ignorance about the Lotus Sutra as the ultimate teaching of Buddhism, that really brings down the number. Our opinions might drive us away because, I don't want to do that. Oh, those bald people, who cares, right? I mean, whatever opinions we somehow glean onto in our life experience that actually is an illusion, not correct, but it influences our decisions. And we'll move away from Buddhism, even though that is the very thing that we should be paying attention to. As rare as that opportunity is, like the sandalwood log appearing with the right hollow in it, and we just seem to just keep moving away from it, even though spiritually, we are attracted to it. That's why it's in our environment. We may move away from it simply through ignorance, foolishness, right? And it only happens every 1,000 years, so when will we encounter it again? In this way, the Buddha explained how difficult it is for a one-eyed turtle to find a floating sandalwood log with a suitable hollow, even after immeasurable, boundless kalpas. He employed this analogy to illustrate the rarity encountering the Lotus Sutra. One should be aware, however, that even if one should encounter the floating sandalwood log of the Lotus Sutra, it is rarer still to find a hollow of the wonderful and difficult to understand law of the Daimoku, which is difficult to chant, if you don't know about it. The ocean represents the sea of the sufferings of birth and death, and the turtle symbolizes us living beings. His limbless state indicates that we are poorly endowed with roots of goodness. The heat of his belly represents the 8 hot hells of anger and resentment, and the cold of the shell on his back, the 8 cold hells of covetousness and greed. See, again, the analogy follows the 10 worlds. So it's a very important concept to understand the 10 worlds, the 9 consciousnesses, because then as you read this stuff, suddenly you'll gain insights that you wouldn't previously have gleaned from your study. His remaining at the bottom of the ocean for 1,000 years means that we fall into the 3 evil paths, hell, hunger, animality, and find it hard to emerge. His rising to the surface once every 1,000 years illustrates how difficult it is to be born as a human being from the 3 evil worlds, paths once in immeasurable kalpas at a time when Shakyamuni Buddha has appeared in the world. So this harkens now more deeply in the 10 worlds and 9 consciousnesses to the concept elaborating to the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. Another very profound teaching of Shakyamuni, only expounded in later Mahayana, because this was a very evolved kind of dissection of mental function, awareness, cognition. And that wasn't talked about so much in the earlier teachings because it was beyond the people's capacity to understand. So it only appears and gets flushed out in the latter teachings in later times. Tendai did a really good job of digging into it, right? That's why he's credited with the elucidation of these 3,000 realms. But it's not Tendai's teachings, it's Shakyamuni's. It just didn't become an obvious method for understanding the mind until Tendai comes along, or his ilk. And it carries all the way to Japan through Dengyo and to Nichiren. The turtle mistakes other floating logs, such as those of pine or cypress, are easy to find, relatively. But a sandalwood log is difficult to encounter. In other words, there are many sects of Buddhism, let alone Lotus Sutra or Nichiren Buddhism. But the correct teaching, the most accurate teaching of Shakyamuni's intent and meaning in the Lotus Sutra, that's not so easy to encounter. This illustrates that it's easy to encounter all other sutras, but difficult to encounter the Lotus Sutra. And even if the turtle should come across a floating sandalwood log, finding one with a suitable hollow is difficult. This means that even if one should encounter the Lotus Sutra, it is difficult to chant the 5 characters or 7 characters of NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo that are its essence. 5 characters of MyoHoRenGeKyo, actually, that's a typo. Are its essence. In other words, to truly understand the correct meaning of the Lotus Sutra. The turtle mistakes east for west and north for south. Similarly, though we flaunt our knowledge and act as if we were wise, we ordinary people regard superior teachings as inferior and inferior teachings as superior. We regard powerless teachings as ones that lead to enlightenment and declare teachings inappropriate for the people's capacity to be appropriate for them. Thus, we believe that the teachings of the True Word schools is superior to the Lotus Sutra, is inferior, and that the former suits the people's capacity, but the latter doesn't. So he's talking about his own day, and we can say the same thing today. I'll say it. There are dozens of groups and schools, quote-unquote, of Nichiren's doctrine of Lotus Sutra Buddhism. But they go wildly astray. Some think that chanting the Daimoku is like Aladdin's lamp, and that if you just chant it, you can get anything you want. That's ridiculous, and I would go so far as to say that is an enemy of Buddha. That's just saying that Buddhism is about earthly delights. I mean, go find any religion to do that. That's about body. That's not about mind. That's about earthly pleasures. That's ridiculous. That doesn't belong anywhere. In Lotus Sutra, certainly, but in Buddhism at all. Buddhism has never been about being Aladdin's lamp and gaining worldly pleasures. So where the hell did that abomination start? Right? Nichiren Shoshu, SGI, Daisaku, all of the, and others. Oh, chant for a new car, chant for a better job. No! That's ridiculous. if you want to change your life, all those other things, they're worldly things. And they may come to you, but they won't come to you because you wish them to come to you. They'll come to you because you raise your life condition. You stay in as adhered as you can to your Buddha. That will elevate your life condition, no matter what your circumstances. And as your life condition increases, betters, so does your environment. Your environment follows your life condition. And if your life condition needs to be supported by certain things in samsara, they'll just happen. You don't chant for them, you chant for your enlightenment. Period. And then samsara will bend and fold to the will of your Buddha-ness. Makes me so angry. I don't know if you can tell. That's what he's talking about here. You may know about the Lotus Sutra and you may practice with groups, but your mind is completely befuddled and I don't want to say damaged, but certainly negatively influenced against the very thing that you're hoping to accomplish. It's horrible. So, this is what Nichiren is saying. So consider well what I have just related, he says. The Buddha made his advent in India and preached various sacred teachings during his lifetime. In his 43rd year of preaching, he began to expound the Lotus Sutra. For 8 years thereafter, all his disciples embraced the Lotus Sutra, which is like a, well, the translation is misleading, wish-granting jewel. But the wish is never for worldly pleasures. The wish is for enlightenment. And this is where a tremendous amount of sects and groups and individuals go astray. You see, that's our world of hunger, right? Our desires. When we see a word like wish, we go, oh yeah, I want that. That's your earthly self. Use that same energy to demand your Buddha-ness, your enlightenment. That is a jewel. That is always the jewel that is discussed in Buddhism. It's difficult because we are in samsara. So how do we talk about enlightenment with the words that are manufactured around thingness and our human existence? That's the difficulty in understanding. As Shakyamuni knew 3,000 years ago, approximately, that we're going to get glued to words. He cautioned about it several times. Heck, in some ways, I think the Lankavatara Sutra was about this singular point. Stop attaching yourself to the words, because the words are made of samsara, and try instead, make your aim instead at perceiving the meaning of what is attempted to convey through these samsaric words. Because they can be, if you start picking at words, you're going to go off base. You're going to get glued right back into samsara, and you're not going to understand. But Japan is separated from India by 200,000 ri of mountains and seas, so that the people here could not even hear the name of the Lotus Sutra. So now back to the story, right? 1,200 years and more after the passing of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lotus Sutra has been brought to China, but still had not been transmitted to Japan. 1,500 and more years after his passing, Buddhism was introduced for the first time to Japan from the Korean kingdom of Pachki during the reign of Emperor Kimei, Japan's 13th ruler. Moreover, in the 700 years that have passed since Prince Jogu first had Buddhism introduced from China, the Lotus Sutra and all the other sutras have been propagated widely. so that from the ruler on down to the common people, those who are perceptive have come to embrace either the entirety, one volume, or one chapter of the Lotus Sutra in order to repay their debt to their parents. Thus they believe that they are truly embracing the Lotus Sutra, but they have never chanted NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo aloud. And though they appear to believe in the Lotus Sutra, in fact, they are far from believing in it, because their understanding is only in the words. They're not gaining or perceiving the meaning. It is as if the one-eyed turtle, having found the sacred sandalwood log that is difficult to encounter, were to fail to put his belly into the hollow. If he were to fail to do so, he would have encountered the sandalwood to no purpose, and he would instantly sink back to the bottom of the ocean, the lower paths, right? In these more than 700 years, the Lotus Sutra has spread widely in our country, and those who read, teach, and make offerings to or embrace this sutra are more numerous than rice and hemp seedlings or bamboo plants and rushes. None of them, however, ever chant NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo in the same way that they call on the name of Amida Buddha. See, when they encounter, because that's the title of the sutra, MyoHoRenGeKyo. So they say it in their minds as they read it and recite it. They may even say it to one another. Have you recited MyoHoRenGeKyo today? But when they chant Amida Buddha, oh, they're inspired. They have a whole new mindset for attaining that Buddha land of Amida Buddha. But it's ineffective. The time and the place and the capacity of the peoples has moved way beyond that. It no longer has any real effect, other than aspiring to something regarding Buddhism, but it's not going to achieve the enlightenment that is the culminating teachings of the Lotus Sutra. It's not going to be enough to take them away from their distractions, to liberate them from their earthly desires, from their attachments, right? Isn't that the Four Noble Truths? We keep going back to what Shakyamuni said in the first days. Life is suffering. How do you end suffering? You have to cease the formations of those desires. And how do you do that? Through living a well-intended attitude and life. And how do you do that? By chanting NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. To read the various sutras or call upon the names of various Buddhas is like the turtle encountering a log of ordinary wood. As long as it is not sandalwood, it fails to cool the turtle's belly. As long as it is not the sun, it fails to warm the shell on his back. Such teachings merely please the eye and gladden the heart, but bring no benefit, no reward. And when we talk about reward, remember, we're talking about the three bodies of Buddha: reward, manifest, and the Dharma, enlightenment. They are like plants that blossom but bear no fruit, or words that are never put into practice. I alone first chanted NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo in Japan. In the more than 20 years since the summer of the 5th year of the Kensho era, 1253, I alone have been chanting NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo day and night, morning and evening. Those who chant the Nembutsu number 10 million. I have no support from anyone in authority, while the allies of the Nembutsu have power and are of noble birth. However, when a lion roars, all the other beasts are silenced, and a dog is terrified by a tiger's shadow. When the sun rises in the eastern sky, the light of all the stars fades completely. The invocation of Amida Buddha's name has exerted influence where the Lotus Sutra has not spread. But once the invocation of NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo has been raised, the Nembutsu will become like a dog cowering before a lion, or the light of the stars paling before the sun. The Daimoku and the Nembutsu are as unlike as a hawk and a pheasant. That is why the 4 kinds of Buddhists all view me with jealousy, and why everyone, both high and low, feels hatred for me. Those who make groundless accusations against me fill the country, and the wicked abound in the land. Therefore, people who choose what is inferior and detest what is superior, it is as though one were to assert that a dog is braver than a lion, or that the stars appear brighter than the sun. Thus, my bad reputation as a man of erroneous views has spread far and wide, so that in one way or another I've been falsely accused, vilified, attacked by swords and staves, and exiled repeatedly. All these persecutions coincide perfectly with the passage in the 5th volume of the Lotus Sutra. For that reason, tears spring to my eyes, and joy fills my entire body. Because he's practicing correctly. He's practicing as Shakyamuni taught in the Lotus Sutra. He's practicing as a true bodhisattva. He's our example. And for this reason, I state again, just in case anyone's unclear, we do not practice Nichiren Buddhism. We do not. We practice Lotus Sutra Buddhism, the Buddhism of Shakyamuni Buddha, through the scholarship and the doctrine and elucidation of our great bodhisattva, Nichiren. He completely repeats that sentiment over and over and over again. Here I have neither clothing sufficient to cover my body nor provisions enough to survive. I live like Su Wu, who sustained himself by eating snow while he lived among the northern barbarians, or like Po Yi, who subsisted on ferns while living on Mount Xiaoyang. Who other than my parents would trouble to visit me in such a place? Were it not for the protection of the 3 treasures, how could I sustain my life for a single day or even for a moment? I can only marvel that you so frequently send a messenger to me when we have never even met. The 4th volume of the Lotus Sutra states that Shakyamuni Buddha will assume the form of an ordinary person in order to make offerings to the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Could it be that Shakyamuni Buddha has taken possession of your body, or were your roots of goodness from the past aroused? A woman known as the Dragon King's daughter achieved Buddhahood through resolute mind and conviction in the Lotus Sutra. She therefore pledged to protect women who embrace this sutra and the latter age. In the latter age, could it be that you are related to her? How admirable, Nichiren. This was a reply to the wife of the late Lord Matsuno. So it's interesting, the connection here. She was the wife of lay priest Matsuno Rokuro Saimon, who lived at Matsuno in Ihara district of Suruga province. Their daughter had married Nanjo Shichiro and gave birth to 9 children, among them Nanjo Tokumitsu. The lay priest and his wife are thought to have been converted to Nichiren's Buddhism. Let's see, Nichiren's Buddhism. Nichiren's doctrine throughout their relationship with the Nanjo family. Matsuno Roku Saimon died in 1278, the year before this letter was written. So evidently Nichiren had received a lot of support from Nanjo's wife, and so he's, or Matsuno Roku Saimon, and when he passed away, he was giving her a great teaching for her to know and for her to spread, and rewarding her with this fable as a demonstration of his sincere gratitude and recognition of her sincere practice of NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. So hopefully all of us will get that message and be equally proud, as I am proud of your practice and the efforts it takes to really know, to really practice the meaning of Buddhism and the meaning of your Buddhahood as absolutely primary, and the great debt of gratitude we owe not only for this life, but this life having encountered the Lotus Sutra and encountered the teaching of the Lotus Sutra that demonstrates how it is the ultimate method to awaken our Buddha nature through its teaching, its NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Namu, Namu, we pledge our complete life to our Buddhahood, NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Awaken it, enliven it, learn from it, use it, see it function in your life experience. Actual proof. Only you can do that. So going back to that question that was posed to me, when we chant, do we change others' karma? We deeply influence them to the level of our own enlightenment. But only they can do it for themselves to change karmically the engine that drives them, right? Karma is the energy and the engine that drives your life forward. This momentum, this kinetic energy. You can influence that kinetic energy. You can come along and the ball can be rolling down the road and you can nudge it and move it. But that ball is responsible for its own kinetic energy. It will just continue rolling until it runs into another influence, which may undo everything that you had done to influence it. Unless it changes its energy, its momentum, its kinetics, the ball will only respond to the same old karmic engine. Same for us. Without enlivening our Buddha-ness, we go right back to samsara. So it's a constant effort. And if you really want to change another person's karma, you need to bring the sandalwood log to them, put them in it, and have them understand for themselves that this is cooling their belly and warming their back. To use the analogy in an odd way. They have to do it for themselves. Because even if you put them in there, will they realize the benefit? Or will they just roll off of it and sink back to the bottom of the ocean? So in a way, putting them on a sandalwood log isn't really helping them. They need to learn that that is the log they should be going toward, so that they themselves can put themselves in the sandalwood log. Then it's meaningful. Do you see? NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. I love you guys so much and I appreciate your efforts. They well up with pride inside of me. I know I've been doing this over 40 years. I know how difficult it can be. But I also know that even in my lowest moments, I know the thing that works. I know how to get out of my doldrums, my samsaric yuckiness. Go and chant. Drag my sorry butt in front of my mandala, open it up, turn the light on, and start chanting. And without fail, every single time, my life condition rises. I know, therefore, that this is the true practice of Buddhism. Do I have the momentum now to stay with it? I hope I do. I think I do. Doing these videos every day that I can trying to do them daily, even though at times I falter for various reasons, samsara. They're incredibly encouraging to me, and I can only hope I transmit that to you. NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Download it as a podcast, the Buddhahood podcast. Thank you for being here, and with that, I'll wait to see you in the next one. NaMuMyoHoRenGeKyo. Bye-bye now.